Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Gary Montsoak, and we're here at Laguna Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. It's Saturday morning. Today's class is going to be on cherries, apricots, apriums, plums, pluots, and Pluerries. They're all, fortunately, all these trees, the some fruits are related and they're treated about the same way. So culture-wise, um, just like most fruit trees, they do bear on year-old wood. So whatever grew last year will bear fruit this year. And generally, most of them with age develop these short branches that have flower buds all along them on the longer branches. So on the main support branches, they do grow. As they're growing, they make flower buds on their main branches too. But over time, the main branches will give rise to a lot of short branches that also flower and fruit. So as the tree gets older, the production switches from the branch tips to the short branch tips that are in the interior of the tree, which means you can cut them short, keep them cut at a lower height without sacrificing too much fruit production as they get older. So generally, peaches, cherries, plums, cherries, apricots are all. Now we sometimes when we get the trees, they have a real tall single stem, and we want to keep the branching fairly low. So, and if they don't come branch low, like this is really nice and low. This is only about 2 foot off the ground, which is a bit low. In fact, in the future, you might be cutting off the bottom branches as they hang down with the weight of the fruit. This one's cut about right. It's about 30 inches, 3 foot off the ground. You want to develop lower branching so that the fruit production is not going to be too high up the tree. So, of course, you don't want to climb ladders to pick fruit. And along with most fruit trees, we're knowing now that if you keep them about 5 foot wide, 6 foot wide by 7 or to 10 foot tall, that's your most efficient size to make fruit. You get more fruit per square foot. And then if you let them grow like you did in the old days to 15 foot, 20 foot across, 10 to 15 foot tall. Those have a lot of too dark areas in the tree for them to food. And as they grow, they tend to make more and more branches. Now this one's fine as it is, although this is a little crowded in here. But for a first year tree, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But as they get older, um, so as for height control, you usually do that in the summer months. So if they're growing 4 or 5 foot a year straight up, straight out. You can trim those back in the summer. They don't have fruit on the new growth. And then in the winter, you look at your branching. Now this branch is if this was in the winter, this branch here is too close to these two, so that they won't have enough sunlight. Now this branch here is real close too, but you can actually turn that out to an open spot and it's fine. This branch has got no place to go, so you can cut it off, give them about a foot between branch. So that's what we're trying to do with the older trees is make sure that they don't get too dense or else the fruiting wood is forced further and further out in the canopy and yet let your tree grow bigger to fruit. But if you can keep the interior of the tree more open, they'll make these short branches that flower and fruit in the interior part of the tree where you can closer down to the ground.
Talked about cutting them a little bit off of the trunk. Did you do that on this type of tree too?
On the peaches and nectarines, we want them to regrow. On these, you don't need to. So on apricots and plums, what they tend to do is make new branches up here, and as the fruit forms on them, the branches tend to start to go lower, and every year they're lower and lower and lower until they're in the way, and then you cut them off, and then they keep making new branches up on top. And then those, with the way the fruit keeps dropping down too. Now, if you keep your tree real small, the weight may not bring them down. You may not have to worry about that. But in the old days, we always had branches that would be too low after about 5 years. You cut them off, but the tree was making plenty of new ones in the center of the tree to take their place. But the spacing is important. So not too dense, or else the fruiting will only form on the outer edges.
What kind of tree is that?
This is apricot. So cherries look a lot different. So cherry trees, especially when they're young, have this smoother aspect to the branching. As they get older, they start looking more like this. They get lots of little branches.
You talked about spreading and bringing them down. The cherry looks like that. Like you're trying to bring them down.
It'll happen by itself. I mean, if they're too close together, yes, spread them out. So apricots, plum, cherries. The book usually says a fan shape, which is kind of natural for them. So you don't have to make the branches horizontal to produce, because these are your producing branches. As long as they get sun on them, they'll be fine. So, now there is the different form of plum. So this is a weeping Santa Rosa. So with this one, we just, generally we let this grow, and the branches just weep over and touch the ground, and you just keep cutting them off the ground. And again, we'll have to thin it out over time as they get too dense, but not as much pruning on these. They're kind of, a lot of them naturally turn over at about 10 feet and come down, or 8 to 10 foot is their natural. But I think a few specimens we've sold lost their weeping tendency and go straight up. Then you have to treat them like a normal plum.
So does a fruit then just mean for the permanent?
Yeah, fruit's about in this area.
You
Them
didn't
up here too.
You didn't train it that way. That'd be pretty now when it's in bloom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that little tiny photo here of one in bloom. Unfortunately, Santa Rosa plum needs a cold winter. This year we're getting it. This year I'm thinking we're going to break 400 hours. I mean, back in the 80s, I used to think 400 was our minimum. Is at least we get 400 hours every year, because I started growing fruit trees in the late 80s when we were getting 400, 500 hours of chill every winter. And then gradually it got less and less and less to when we had 20, 13, 14, 15, we had about 100 hours of chilling. I'm going, okay, what's going on here? Global warming is real, and now we're back to 400 hours again. But it's a cycle that repeats.
No, these are all, we were at a different class, I believe you said you're doing your pruning after they fruit.
On the
Right after they
apricot.
fruited, like on the apricot,
Well, we do height control in the summer.
okay?
So if you want to get your trees smaller, do it in the summer, because they haven't formed any fruiting wood yet. In the wintertime, we thin them out to let more light into the branches so they can develop more branching in there. But summer pruning is height control.
This tree was given to us, and I have it in a pot, and we're going to transplant it into a larger pot. But the branches from the main trunk, some of them are so low, just hanging. And I'm thinking, do I leave those because they are fruiting, or should I cut them back?
Sometimes those are your best fruiting branches.
Pardon me?
Sometimes those are the best fruiting
Okay,
branches.
so leave it.
As long as they're getting light, they'll fruit.
Okay.
And because they're low, they get, they get more cold air. I mean, on the years when we don't get enough chill, the bottom branches are the only branches you have hope for to get fruit on. If we have a lot of chill, the top branches are the best branches for fruiting.
Okay. Which is what we're getting right now. So hopefully.
Yeah, the entire tree will produce this coming year. It'll be a nice year.
So you said the new growth that you cut in the summer did not have the fruiting branches on. So when do the fruiting branches come out? Fall?
Well, I mean, anything that grows this year won't have any fruit on it. The fruit is forming on what grew last. So anything that grows this year won't have fruit. But those branches can then fruit next year. So whatever grows this year, whatever leaf there is on the tree can actually form a flower, but at the base. And the more sun that leaf has, the more likely it is to have a flower bud, although every leaf can make a flower. No, uh, they're not that picky about natural soil, but there are some different rootstocks that are involved. So among these trees, cherry trees are the most sensitive to root rot. Apricots and plums not as sensitive to root rot, but they can still get it if you've done your soil wrong. Compost ground causes root rot, or if they're just in a soggy mess that stays wet for months and months after the rains are over, that can cause root rot too. Now they come on several rootstocks. The plums and apricots, Apriums and Pluots, are either on citation rootstock with the pink tag, or a different rootstock, either Myro, which is the plum rootstock. uh, Most of them are on Myro. I don't know if they name the guard on the plums. I think it's Myro. The citation loves wet clay. So if you've got a real boggy area, this works the best of the rootstocks. However, it doesn't take drought at all, at all. So if you're more worried about drought, get the Myro. Now, on some trees, we don't have a choice. Some of the Pluots, some of the Pluerries do not like the Myro rootstock. They like the citation, which is a peach rootstock. So they can't sell it on those. But if you have the choice, I do like Myro, the yellow tag ones better, just because, well, you never know. Maybe in the future we're going to have floods. You just don't know.
What about the Mazard and the Maxim?
Okay, on cherries, yeah.
So that's what you're talking about.
So, apricots and the plums, Pluots and Pluerries come on citation or Myro. And then the cherries, the standard rootstock is called Mazard, which allows a cherry tree to grow up to 30 feet. This is Maxima 14, which allows a tree to grow 10 to 15 foot. And then there's one called New Root, which only allows it to grow to 10 feet. But and certain cherries do better on certain rootstocks also. So some cherries, you look at them on the maximum rootstock and they're like this tall when we get them. And then on the Mazard, they're 10 foot tall when we get them. So, and even if they're on this full size rootstock, just trim them. The cherries are not that fast growing. You can keep them any height by pruning. So, and cherries, so apricots and plums and their relatives tend to produce the second year, even the first year. This tree's big enough to have this will fruit this year. Cherry trees, um, they say commercially they don't pick for 7 years. There's not enough fruit on it, so they're the slowest to develop the fruiting wood. I would say I'm used to having them get a few fruit the second year, but just not much for quite a while. So that's the problem with cherry trees, is that they take a little longer to make the fruiting wood. Now, we're still not real confident on which cherries to promote. We'll talk about that in a cherry. We're pretty confident on everything else. So all these trees need to chill. They up until about 10 years ago, we really didn't have much in the way of cherry. Well, 15 years ago, they started bringing out the low chill cherries. Now we're working with those to figure those out. Uh, there's not much in the way on, so most apricots and most plums need 400 hours or more of chill. And we don't get that every year. So you have to be careful on which ones of those you pick. So there's only a fraction of the plums and apricots, Apriums and Pluots and Pluerries that do well here. So be aware of that. Don't buy everything that you see. Although I did that in the late 80s when we had those cold winters, I thought we could grow anything. I mean, I was in heaven. with the varieties of fruit trees we were growing in those days. I was just amazed. I thought, boy, we could go anything here. And we're not zone 10 like the book says. I thought we were zone 8, like Fresno. But yeah, we're truly in zone 10 apparently. But this year we might be a zone 9. Okay, so when you plant them, just make a hole, drop them in. The only time you have to worry about anything is if you are pulling out a relative, like any other stone fruit, and putting them in, then you got to change the dirt. You can just put in like 5 bags of sand or a couple bags of our top pot to take the place of the soil. But they do not like remnants of the relatives rotting in the ground. So just watch that part. Otherwise, someplace that's not too boggy, and you'll be fine. Um, since they need chill, we often put them on the north sides of the house. So they all ripe, most of these ripen mid-year when the sun's at its highest, usually on a two-story house. There's only about a couple feet of shade coming off the north side during the summertime when the sun's at its highest. So you can get the fruit trees pretty close to the north side, which will give them more shade in the winter, more coolness in the winter, and then pretty good sun to ripen the fruit in the sun. We don't really do much spraying on these trees. Now we do watch ants. Ants will bring aphids up the tree. So Andro is one of the best ant baits we've seen. That'll lower the population of ants in your yard. Um, Stop the ants and the aphids are killed by the ladybugs or scale. Sometimes they get scale. We don't see that much disease on them. Now, if we have rain until summer, we've had that a few times in the past. Then might have to control some leaf spot diseases. Otherwise, we don't usually like peaches and nectarines. Usually require copper spray in the winter to control that. But these trees don't get the peach leaf curl. They can get shot holes, so copper fungicide can help a little bit with that if we have continuous rain. But we're not expecting that this year. Fertilizer wise, nothing special. A good fruit tree fertilizer. We use Osmocote in pots, but regular organic fruit tree fertilizer in the ground, no problem. Now, most of them do well in containers. You know, this container, this size, good enough to get you about 50 fruit a year on the plums and apricots, maybe more than that. The one tree that doesn't seem to like black plastic or being in containers at all is cherry trees. Their root system seems to be more sensitive to heat buildup. So if we have a really hot summer, they look terrible. Now, last summer was warm, but it wasn't oppressive. We didn't have, last year the 100-degree weather was in April, but not during the summer. So the cherry trees actually look pretty good in containers. But some summers, if we have extended periods of 100-degree weather, they look cooked. They don't recover that well from that. So cherry trees best in the ground unless you can keep your pot insulated somehow from the air around it. A fabric pot may stay cool. May. It's not a given. Okay. Water-wise, like any other tree, they want their entire root system to be moist at all times during production season. Once the fruit's off, not as critical, but while they're flowering, fruiting, developing the fruit, we want to keep it moist. In the ground, the only way you can tell is if you have, um, well, there are devices that farmers use that are put in the ground that'll measure moisture, but the little watering things, moisture meters that you buy, they're not long enough to measure. So the entire root system of the plant is usually 12 to 15 inches deep. And generally, if the ground's moist enough for roots to get water out of it, you can push like a finger-sized stake or a pencil-thick stake through it that deep. You can push a stake in the ground about a foot deep by hand, then it's moist enough for the plant to get the water. If you can't push in the foot, you're running dry. So you have to up the water. Most of it is between June, well, it's in summer. A few of them hang fruit longer than summer, but most of them are ripe, and most of them are ripe in early summer. Okay. So as far as the varieties go, we can start. So all these have hybrids that are bred between them now. It's interesting. So cherries are from Caucasus Mountains in Eurasia. Plums are actually from China. They're called Japanese plums, but they're from China. They just came to the United States from Japan. Apricots are from China. They were taken all around the Mediterranean by the Romans, so they're all over the place, but they're originally from China. European plums we can't grow here. Ones from Eastern Europe, we don't have the cold that they need. So they need, you're talking about the prunes, the European plums, probably 450 hours or more. So we've only had a few years where it's cold enough. Now, if you live in a steep canyon in the foothills here, you can probably grow European plums, but most of us cannot. So, and so the Apriums are somewhere between an apricot and a plum, and the Pluots, but their Apriums are closer to apricots, and the Pluots are closer to plums than apricots. There is something called a called plum cot. So that was half plum, half apricot. They weren't that good. They didn't produce well here, so we quit carrying plum cots, which are halfway between. But the Apriums, which are closer to apricots, and the Pluots, which are closer to plums, some of those have done really well and taste really good. And then Pluerries are between plums and cherries. So, and those are turning out to be one of our fastest selling plants because they've done well. Now, that's most of that's done not in a lab, but they have to do what is called an embryo rescue. So the guys who are doing these hybrids are doing just taking the pollen from, let's say, a apricot, putting on a plum flower, and then they wait a week, and then they have to rescue the embryo because that's not a viable embryo on the tree. As far as the tree concerns, it's not viable, that cross. So they take the embryo out of the flower and put it in a petri dish and grow it there. So that's what Zyger Genetics, there's a family that does all this weird stuff up. And so they don't do it in a lab. I mean, they don't cross in the lab like GMO stuff. It's a natural cross. Now, Luther Burbank, who was around in the 1800s and 1900s, he's known because he got his money creating the Burbank potato, which saved the Ireland or saved the potato crop around the world. So he made a lot of money on that, bought some land in Northern California and started breeding plums and other things. But he's well known for his plums. So he claimed he crossed his apricot plums back in the 1800s. No one believed him. And there was no way to check. But now that we have the DNA stuff, they checked some of the stuff he did and said, he did it. He actually did that back in the 1800s or early 1900s. So sometimes that cross on the tree actually makes and makes a viable seed. But now they do it differently. So anyway, apricots. The most famous apricot is called Royal, also known as Blenheim. And it was developed in England. So this one used to be grown in lake forests. What was in that area back in the 19 teens. I mean, when we had our nursery there, we looked up some of the local history, and they said, yeah, this was an apricot orchard we were on back in the 19 teens, and it was so successful. They said they were growing more apricots there than anywhere else in California. and sending the dried fruit to the soldiers in World War One. And then in the 1920s, the winters got too warm. So apparently there was a warm spell back then too. Stopped production, pulled them all out, planted citrus. When we moved there, there was citrus on our property. So in the 60s. So that's the history of that area. So that used to be, so they did have for, 5 or 6 years, really cool winters back in the 19 teens where they grow apricots there. And then it changed on them. And again, we've seen that over and over. So, that one we don't carry. That is considered the standard of the apricots, taste-wise. The ones we carry are Flora Gold and Gold Kiss and Tropical. These two seem to be a little greater than 300 hours of chill, so they haven't produced well since 2012. But Gold Kiss for 20 years was our best-selling apricot. The fruit is considered of mediocre quality, but when I grew the tree for 20 years, and I thought they were quite good. I mean, anything that ripens on your tree is really good. But among other apricots, it's not considered that good. Tropical was less than 300 hours. So tropical was found in, I think, in Moore Park or somewhere in that area. And it was a branch on a Blenheim tree up there that was fruiting 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the orchard. So they cut it off and said, okay, needs 2 weeks less winter than the other Blenheim. So they call it tropical. This one so far hasn't missed a year. Even those really hot winters we had, like these wouldn't wake up. They wouldn't wake up until midsummer. They just couldn't figure out. They weren't getting winter. They wouldn't wake up. Tropical woke up at the right time around April. Didn't make a whole lot of fruit those years, but made some. So we're really pleased with tropical. It seems to uh, want to wake up normally and fruit lightly during the real hot winters, and then we get a good crop, better crop when it's cooler. And those are the only three that we can get that have a chance of doing well here on a regular basis. There's one more on the list, but I don't recall what it was. I've grown other apricots, and in the past, other apricots have been said to do well here. Katie, we tried for 5 years, never got a single fruit. Uh, and a number of others we've tried. Garden Annie, never got any fruit. So we'll stick with these three for the time being. And they all ripen about the same time, early summer. Every year it's a little different. The colder the winter and the earlier the warms up, like last year, we had winter in December only, and then it warmed up in February. A lot of things bloomed in February, which is really early. Happens this year. February this year, according to the forecast, is supposed to be cooler than normal for our area. So we'll see what happens. We have this Canada air coming down this next week. We'll see what that does. So Aprium, um, first one that came out was Flavor Delights. Then Cotton Candy. Then Leocott. There's more than that, but these are the ones we that have a chance of fruiting well here. Flavor Delights greater than 300. Cotton Candy seems to be right around 300. Leocott seems to be less than 300. Now these are all have the Flavor Delight. What we've seen so far is a looks like a normal apricot. I couldn't see the difference in the taste or the color or anything. Cotton candy definitely has a plum in it. The skin is more not orange. It's more kind of this cream colored skin. And then Leocott seems to be a huge apricot. I mean, really big fruit. So of these three, Lidcott's probably the lowest. Well, we think it's the lowest. So cotton candy, though, it's not bad. A lot of people are really raving about that one. Unfortunately, this year, we only got 5 trees, so they're gone.
But they do the thing where you have a good crop one year, you have a bad one next year.
Well, any tree can do that, but
Last year I didn't get anything on my cotton candy in the year before.
last year, I don't know about that winter. Last year's winter was kind of iffy.
So it just didn't fall. Yeah, no, it's a good one.
I mean, we've seen apricots put on bumper crops year after year after year. Yeah. Anyway, so we have these two in stock out there.
Favorite?
Well, cotton candy definitely has a different flavor, so it's. But if you like apricots, I didn't get to taste one. We had a loaded tree, and my daughter took it and planted at her in-laws' place, so I didn't get to eat the fruit. She said it was good,
Didn't bring you in?
so I'll have to keep one and see what happens. Okay, so plums. So there are some really good plums out there, but unfortunately, most of the really good ones we can't. Um, I'll list them in the order of ripening. So beauty, well, let's do that. The beauty, Santa Rosa, burgundy, of course, leafing Santa Rosa should be there too. Satsuma, and Inca. We just got ink in. I wanted to get it last year, couldn't get it. We got it in this year. So on these, beauty ripens, beauty, the chill on it is probably about 250 hours. So it may be the lowest chill of our plums, but our pricing is in May, June, which is kind of early. Now let's say early, let's say June. And if we have June bloom, the flavor's not there, not like it should be. And even Santa Rosa has that problem. And Santa Rosa also is kind of late June, but some years we don't have the sunlight for it. It comes out really tart. Now Burgundy centers around July, Satsuma is July, and Inca is August. So Inca is Satsuma and Inca are most likely to reach their full potential because we're always hot those months when they're ripening. Now Inca is a yellow inside and out. Satsuma is red meat. Burgundy is red meat. Santa Rosa kind of amber. So is Beauty, kind of amber color. Um, Satsuma's the original blood plum. It was developed by Luther Burbank did this one, this one, this one, and this one. He created 4 out of the 5, or hearing 5 out of the 6. Burgundy is a daughter of Mariposa, which is the daughter of Satsuma. Luther Burbank didn't do those. So we got an Inca because Inca, we think the chilling Inca is about maybe 280. Satsuma's got to be around the same, about that might be 300. Burgundy's probably a little more than 300. Santa Rosa has been the one that all the books say are 300 hours or less, and now they've also just changed it 400 hours because everybody's track record on Santa Rosa around here is terrible. Unless you live by a big river or a canyon, it's been terrible. My dad grew Santa Rosa for 10 years, one crop. I grew it for 20 years, one crop. So we know Santa Rosa's got to have a higher chill than most of the literature currently says. Now the weeping Santa Rosa acts like it only needs about 300. That may be because of the branching rather than because the branches hang low. It's possible that's the reason, or it might have changed when it became a weeping one. But a friend of mine who gets fruit on his weeping Santa Rosa every year, he does live fairly close to a river, maybe 10 foot above the riverbed. So it's possible that's his location. Now, none of these probably, Satsuma said to need a pollinator, but I have customers who only grow Satsuma, and they said they get wonderful crops. So I'm not positive that thing needs a pollinator. It probably can't pollinate anything else. That's what the thing is, but I don't know that it needs a pollinator. But all the literature says it does. Burgundy seems to be the best universal pollinator. So if you have a Pluot, Pluerry, or anything else that needs pollination, Burgundy seems to be the one that does it the best because it seems to have the longest bloom time. So when I was back in the 80s, I had a Burgundy plum that grew kind of this form, a very narrow upright shape, and that's its natural form. And we had those winters that would be, we get a frost, and then we get some warm weather, 80-degree weather, and we have another frost, more warm weather. You go back and forth like that all winter. And what happened on that tree is the bottom third got its chill first, and then the middle section got its chill second, and the top got its chill last. So that tree bloomed for at least 3 months. I couldn't believe it. It's like, and I was picking fruit on that tree from late June to early September. Average 9 a day throughout that whole period. I was going, this is great. Now I don't think it happens much anymore. We don't get that kind of winter anymore, but that's why they consider it the best pollinator. It is known to have a very long bloom period.
So Burgundy crosses with a Pluerry, does it become more plum and cherry? Because it adds an extra.
The flesh of the fruit has nothing to do with pollen. So the seed of the Pluerry is crossed with the plum. The seed will make it potentially can make a tree that's more plum-like. But the flesh of the fruit is determined by the mother's genetics. So by that.
How many hours are we tracking?
We think, well, right now, the warmest areas of Orange County are right around 350. So that's pretty good. We haven't seen that in a long time. And with another week of cold weather ahead of us, I think we'll hit 400. I wouldn't be surprised if we did 5. I mean, the coldest winter was that I can remember. But that was my memory is only, 4 years of gardening. So 2007, 8. It didn't warm up that year until June. We couldn't believe it. I mean, a lot of our plants, like crepe myrtles, if it's hot in the winter, they'll wake up in January and start blooming in January. But that year, they did not leaf out until June. We couldn't believe it. They didn't leaf out till June. Jujubes didn't leaf out till June. It was so cool, nothing to wake up. So that was the only year we had decent sized Honeycrisp apples. Because Honeycrisp needs like 800 hours of chill, and our Honeycrisp actually got that big. Otherwise, they were as big as cherries. All the other years we tried Honeycrisp because they didn't get the chill they needed. So anyway, Burgundy's kind of a compromise if you really like plums and want to get them every year. Inca, probably your best bet. So.
Very one question. I actually have a Burgundy in the planted them about 2.5 years ago. no fruit yet, but it does have that kind of that
Upright. Yeah.
stable structure going on. It's like 9 foot up now, but they're just all twigs. Like, are we supposed to do trip like pruning them?
Well, the only thing you need to do is kind of open the tree up so the branches aren't too close together. That's about it. I never trimmed, I didn't know anything about pruning those days, so I didn't trim my Burgundy plum, but boy, it made a lot of fruit. For many, many years I had it, all throughout the late 80s.
It's not possible.
Oh,
It's this whole, like,
my Burgundy fruited second year of its life in the ground, so yours should too. Yours should fruit really well this year. We have the winter for it. I mean, there's always a chance that winter will do something really weird, like it'll get warm and they'll bloom and then it'll get cold again and then mess up your crop. That's always possible. Well, if you can, yes, but put some shade over them, but I don't know if that will help much. Last year, that heat was so early that I don't think plants were prepared at all. We saw a lot of things defoliate totally after that heat wave because they say trees really don't grow much roots until mid-spring. So I don't think they had enough roots to handle that heat. Okay, so let's see, I didn't talk about cherries yet. Okay, cherries. So let's go in order of fruiting. So mini royal, royal crimson, royal blue, lapines, and Brooks. So Brooks is the new guy out here. We brought Brooks in to find a partner for lapines. So the books consider these two to be self-fertile. We don't want to take a chance. Now I grew lapine starting in the 1980s. Um, and I didn't order it from Dave Wilson. I ordered it from Stark Brothers, Missouri, and it was called Stark Crimson. And it said Zone 9. I said, "Oh, that's kind of close to us." So I wanted to go cherry, so I ordered a cherry tree from them, and it fruited the next year. I'm going, boy, what is this thing? So I called Dave Wilson, said, I got this fruit tree, this cherry tree that's fruiting in my yard. What is it? They said, well, we sell all the cherry trees to Stark Brothers Nursery to sell. So it's got to be one of these three. So they sent me three, Lapine, Stella, and Craig's Crimson. The only one that fruited regularly was Lapine. So it was Lapine's that was the one that was fruiting. And the literature from Dave Wilson said 700 to 1,000 hours chill. Because Lapines is made in Canada, created in Canada. So we were really surprised. And over the years, the chill on requirements of beans has come down and come down and come down because it keeps flowering and fruiting every year, even though it blooms really late. I mean, it blooms like it does need 500 hours of chill, but so far, every year I've had it, it's bloomed, which is really weird. So anyway, so that one came out. We started with that one, and then in 2008, Dave Wilson introduced mini roll and roll leaves, and they said this one needs 250 hours of chill. This one maybe 275 hours of chill. Is what they told us. So uh, we had the trees blooming in 2008. Well, we have them in 2007. And they bloomed in 2008. Mini roll bloomed a month before roll leaf. We're going, what are we supposed to do here? It bloomed way before royal leaf bloomed. Actually, they introduced it, I think, about 2005. So in 2008, we had a pair of them, and they really didn't bloom at the same time. it overlapped a few days, so we got a couple cherries on Mini Royal, and that was it. And Dave Olson said, yeah, we're seeing that problem here. So what they did in 2014, they introduced Royal Crimson that blooms between these two. So Mini Royal blooms first, 2 weeks later, Royal Crimson blooms, 2 weeks later, Royal Leaf blooms. That's what we're seeing. And then about 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, Lapines blooms. Brooks, we're not sure yet. We haven't seen it. Someone bought my Brooks, unfortunately, so I don't have one to test. I'll have to save another one as soon as that thing blooms. But Brooks, the literature on Brooks says you use Lapines for pollination, so we think they're going to be close together. And these are higher quality than these, quality-wise. We mean that they're generally firmer, crisper fruit, whereas Mini Roll tends to be a little softer. So most people like, and Roll Lee is better than, so it seems like this is the best quality going this way. But they're still all good tasting. So Roll Crimson's supposed to be self-fertile. We haven't eaten one yet, so that's where we're stuck right now. It's
Mine produce latches. Very like the it's like a cherry, same cherry.
and taste-wise,
Oh yeah, mine.
okay. Roll Crimson.
I have the Royal Crimson and the Mini Royal, and they both produce cherry.
How old's your tree?
Yeah, the Royal Crimson in 2017 and the Mini Royal in 2019. Probably about 30. They're still small. They're about 30 fruit on each.
We've had our Royal Crimson since 2014. Still hasn't produced.
Where do you live? I just read it, but my name's like small. Oh, in the parts I'm in. We're down by you. But I'm by the 2 blocks off the Funny Creek. Which, so you get the cold. Yeah, I've had a lot of nights at 37 right now.
Well, these have been waking up normally here, so we know the chill on this one's probably going to be about 270. We think this one's more like 300. Lapines, I don't know. It's a weird tree because when we had those hot winters, it still bloomed really nicely too. 2007. So Lapines, the problem we've had with that, and even though they said self-fertile, I don't think I've ever got more than 100 cherries on my trees, which was, a good 8-foot span, 8-foot tall. It just wouldn't make enough cherries, so we don't think it's totally self-fertile. We think it's partially. I mean, we actually met someone from Connecticut a few years ago. They said, we don't consider Lapine self-fertile. So I'm going, okay, that makes sense now. So that's why we brought in Brooks. And they go partially self-fertile.
Did you keep the guy's name who bought the Brooks and ask him how it did?
No, I disappeared. I didn't see it go.
What else do your research?
So we haven't seen the chill on Brooks yet. I think the book says 500 hours or less. So let's check that out. See what this is their latest catalog. So 500 hours or less. And Lapines 500 hours or less. So I mean, there are some. In general, the lower the chill requirement for trees, the earlier they bloom, but not always. Dave Wilson's noted that some trees don't need much chill but wake up late. So that could be what's going on with Lapines, but we're not sure. Okay.
But I haven't. It brings up something, because when I got my Crimson Royal, it was just a whip. Okay, they were just releasing and letting people, experiment in garden. Can you get whips? The neighbor wants to produce his own trees. He's the guy trying to put them in the park.
Well, I have the Royal Crimsons I have right now are tall, skinny things.
Just like one thing.
And if you want some really tall, I have some uncut ones underneath the blanket. Okay, so Pluots are about 3/4 Plum, 1/4 Apricot. Now, one of the weird things you notice about Pluots is that a lot of them naturally develop leaves with holes. So in the summertime, you look at the Pluot trees, leaves are holy. And I've actually sat there and watched the leaves, some new leaves in the wind, the wind's kind of ruffling them. And I see holes forming in the leaves just as I'm watching them. It's like their leaf structure isn't proper, so they easily tear compared to plums. So if you see holy holes in the Pluot leaves, it's not a disease, it's just the way they are. They look like plums, but yeah, they get holes in the leaves. So as far as now, there's a lot of Pluots that there's actually a number of them that perform well here, but a lot of the ones that perform well ripen too early. So we had something called Flavor Rosa, ripened in May, made a lot of fruit, no taste at all. And there's a bunch of those that ripen early. We're just too cloudy in May and early June and April to ripen those kind of fruits. So we settle on some of the Pluots that are better tasting here. So one is called the Apple Supreme. Then you got Flavor King, Flavor Grenade. These we have a good track record on. We've got Splash out there, but that one hasn't performed that well here. I'll put it down here. It hasn't performed that well. No one's got much too often. And another one called Emerald Drop, which is new, which we're sold out of, so I won't put it down either because we don't have a track record on that either. We did notice that the fruit on Splash tastes a lot like a cherry, but no one's got much fruit at all, so we'll forget that one. So these three are plum-like. Now, the reason why Pluots have become so popular and so successful is because the stores like them. Supermarkets really love them. So plums have that problem in that they only have and the farmers like them too. Plums only have a 3-day picking window. You got to pick them before they fall off and splash on the ground. And they turn to water balloons real fast too. Pluots generally have a 1-month hang time or longer. And they store firm for a long time also. So stores love them, farmers like them because they're not in a rush to pick them all at once. With plums, you pick them 2 days too early, they never taste good. You pick them 2 days too late, they're on the ground, they're water balloons. So the Pluots are much easier going fruit for handling. They also are rated higher than most of the plums are. I would tell you, Flavor King's probably the best tasting fruit I've ever grown. Now, the problem with Flavor King is it needs more than 300 hours to chill. The Apple Supreme needs, we'll say about 270. Flavor needs right around 300. Splash, we don't know. Um, so the Apple Supreme so far really hasn't missed a year. Even those hot winters, it still made some fruit. So that it may actually be a little lower than 270. Um, Flavor King, not much fruit in the last 10 years. However, when I was doing that in the 90s, that was good fruit. And Flavor Grenade, so this ripens June, July. This ripens August. This ripens September, October. The Flavor Grenade will really hang a long time. We've seen Flavor Grenade hang ripe 2 months. Flavor King can hang until September.
Now these are good for the north side of the house.
And we just are picking ours up today.
Yeah, I had my Flavor King about 10 feet. Trunk was about 10 feet off the north side of my house. And I had a 2-story house. Not much overhang though, so it was good sun in the summer. But I was having when that thing was ripening. And one time we went on a trip right in the middle of August, so I picked a whole bunch of unripe ones, took on the trip with me. They ripened over 2 weeks, ripened one a day or so over a couple of weeks on the trip. So
Now, how long does it take to start getting fruit on the getting ours?
Second year. Well, a lot of the ones we have will make a few fruit this year. If you see branches like this with this big buds on them, those are fruiting buds. These do require pollination. In my yard, my last house, burgundy was the kingpin. If the burgundy bloomed that year, all my pluots did well. If burgundy didn't bloom, nothing did well. But burgundy did need 300 hours, so 300 hours seems also to work with a lot of these. But if the burgundy plum bloomed, boy, I had great crops.
Being near citrus trees, is that gonna be harmful? Okay,
No, these flowers seem to be more attractive than citrus flowers to
Okay.
the bees.
Mary,
Mhm.
how do they do in pots? And if you put it in the ground, is it okay to put it like near a wall?
Yeah. Well, yeah. None of these trees will knock over anything. They don't live long enough to be a structural problem, and they've done well in pots. Okay, the newest ones we've been carrying have been Pluerries, which is a plum cherry hybrid. We first got them in like 2013, and we're amazed. Those things, first thing to bloom. At least the ones they sent us. So some of the Pluerries don't do well here, but the ones we've gotten, there's two that we really promote: Candy Heart
So is that a palm of its yellow?
and Sweet Treat. Now these have done well everywhere we've had them. Flavor Punch has not, but Flavor Punch did fine last year. I haven't eaten one yet. My daughter took it home, so I'm getting fruit from Flavor Punch. But I just been told it tastes very fruity. But so the chill on Candy Heart and Sweet Treat probably around 250. Might even be lower than that. Flavor Punch, we think it's around 300, but I don't know for sure. But these two have not missed. Um, the fruit ripens in July on both of them. Long hang time. So Candy Heart looks like a small plum, tastes like a cherry. So it's cherry flavored plum, about that big. And the Sweet Treat is a plum tasting cherry that tastes like a plum. So they're both about the size of apricots. Sweet Treat has the texture of a cherry, but the flavor of plum, and then the Candy Heart's the opposite. And have just been amazed by both of those. Taste wise, everything about them is really good. Plus, they're the most reliable of this group in this area. Their leaves are really odd. Um, they almost look like you crossed plum and a peach with a longer, lighter colored leaf than the plums are. They don't look like cherries at all. No, they need each other. I mean, the first year we got them, we only had Sweet Treat and nothing else to pollinate because it bloomed too early. And then when they brought Kenny Heart, they bloomed exactly at the same time. Now, last year they would have bloomed at the same time plums have bloomed. They said any plum in a Pluot can pollinate Pluerries, but most years they'll bloom earlier. It depends on how the winter's set up.
do you know what zone Fallbrook is in?
Well, it's hilly, so it's all over the place too.
But
Zone
if
20,
it's like
Yeah,
it's
it gets
bottom,
cool,
it
you
goes
get
to the
more
thicket,
hours chill there, right?
yeah, it's
in
true. You're
in the
more,
bottom areas. That's what I mean, like cherry fruit, I think.
yeah, Fallbrook is definitely, I know it's kind of weird. Orange County Basin, LA Basin, and the San Diego area don't have any hills between them and the ocean. We don't seem to get as cold. But all the other areas between here and San Diego, because you got the hills on the ocean, yeah, it seems to get colder inland. So even Oceanside, right on the coast there, seems to get colder than here in the wintertime because they don't get that sea breeze as much, I guess. But yeah, these two are spectacular. So
Now, what was the highest temperature you considered a chill?
54.
50.
Yeah, if you look at, I don't have the website on me, but there's a California website that tracks the chill, and they have 3 different models you can look at. So I look at the Utah model because that's the only way we're going to get chill is on the Utah model because it goes, they get chill between 34 and 55. The ones that say below 45, I think we're only at 200 hours of chill on that one, but the ones that say anywhere between 34 and 54, we're at 3. I think right now we're dipped a little, we're down about 340, but this next week it should shoot way up.
You said you sold out of these already, right?
No, we restocked.
You did?
The sweet treats are a little on the small side, but sweet treat grows like a weed, so you don't have to worry about that. Candy hearts are bigger, the ones we got in. So we have both of them out there.
How do they need to be planted in the ground or top?
You try to keep them within 10 feet of each other. And you can, if you want, you can grow them within a few inches of each other and just grow them as one tree.
What was the other question? We have a large pot, probably 10 times that pot right there. Did you put 2 Pluots in the same pot?
Sure.
Oh, so the waste the other.
Yeah, then we can use the other big pot. We have 2 big pots, and we get 2 of that.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who have fruit hedges rather than trees. So, we've seen pictures of yards where they plant a different fruit tree every 3 feet and just keep them as a little bush.
Oh,
Dave Wilson said they took everything in their inventory and pruned it at 4 foot high and 3 foot wide, and they produced fruit. So, it's mostly the timing. As long as you do your height control in the summer and not in the winter, you'll get so all the plants we're talking about, they don't grow past first day of fall. So you do your pruning in summer, and then they'll stay that height during fall, and whatever you've got there in the fall will make fruit flowering wood on it. Of course, if you hedge them yearly, you're not going to get your best quality fruits. That technique, it's better to do what the orchards do and thin them out, all that stuff too. Yeah. But you can certainly do the height control.
I want to make sure I heard correctly. You could put 2 Pluerry and don't share a pot together, the same with the Pluot.
Yeah.
What size pot would be?
Well, I mean, they'll just grow as big as the pot allows. So, I mean, you can't fit too many things with root balls this big in the pot. So, I mean, this pot here, you might be able to put up to 4 trees in there, but you can only let it grow about this big before it'll outgrow the pot. So you just have to keep cutting it. Same thing as if you were just to multi-graft one tree. Just because you put 4 plants in there, it's not going to go 4 times bigger than one tree. You just be sharing the space.
But it is better if you have a larger pot. You're going to do more plants in it.
Yeah. But certainly there's no rules on this.
Right.
why do they not multi-graft like these?
They do.
So that you only have to have one tree and you'll cross pollinate.
Well, they do, but they don't put the varieties that do well here for us. So we get the multi-grafted apple trees. I've got several types of multi-grafted apple trees because all the apples tend to do well here. But when they go to peaches and plums and things like that, they rarely choose the ones that work here. I mean, we're just not in a great area. If you're in the Central Coast or Central Valley or anywhere else in the United States, you can grow the other ones that they do. but we're just, we have this strange spring bloom.
We made the mistake and bought one at Home Depot that was like 3 or 4 different kinds. I thought, well, this is gonna be great. Put it in the ground. Only one grew and another one came out of the bottom. A peach like came out of the bottom, which never would produce. It was just sucking off the tree. And then one was just one plum. And we got a bumper crop one year. Yeah, we're like nothing since then. 6 or 10 pieces of fruit. Maybe this will be the year we get a lot.
True, true. So yeah, a lot of stores in the area, they don't know any better, so they order those. And,
Lesson learned. It was a long time ago.
okay, thank you.
Very
Thank you.
good. Thank you.